Have you ever stood in a place so steeped in mystery that the air itself seemed to hum with secrets? Picture this: rolling green hills, ancient ruins whispering of forgotten times, and beneath it all, hidden in plain sight, a colossal celestial map etched into the very earth. This is the Glastonbury Zodiac, a sprawling, enigmatic formation said to stretch across the landscape around Glastonbury, England. Some believe it's a sacred diagram of the stars, carved into the land by ancient hands thousands of years ago. Others dismiss it as a mere trick of the imagination, a pattern seen only by those who wish to see it. But what if this giant zodiac is more than just a legend? What if it's a relic of a lost civilization, a message from the past waiting to be deciphered? The idea of the Glastonbury Zodiac first captured public attention in the early 20th century, when a woman named Katherine Maltwood claimed to have discovered its outlines in the natural features of the land: rivers, roads, and hills forming the shapes of the zodiac signs. But here's where the mystery deepens. If it's real, who created it? Was it the work of prehistoric astronomers, druids, or even a culture older than recorded history? The theories range from the plausible to the fantastical, each one more intriguing than the last. And then there's the skepticism. Critics argue that the so-called zodiac is nothing more than pareidolia, the human tendency to see patterns where none exist. Yet, despite the debates, the allure of the Glastonbury Zodiac endures, drawing seekers, scholars, and skeptics alike into its orbit. What makes this mystery so compelling isn't just the question of its existence, it's what it represents. If the Glastonbury Zodiac is real, it could rewrite our understanding of ancient Britain, revealing a people deeply connected to the cosmos, capable of feats we've yet to fully comprehend. It's a puzzle that challenges us to look beyond the surface, to question what we think we know about history and the limits of human ingenuity. So, come with us on a journey into the heart of one of England's most captivating enigmas. We'll explore the evidence, the myths, and the unanswered questions surrounding the Glastonbury Zodiac. By the end, you might just find yourself wondering, is this ancient celestial map a forgotten masterpiece, or simply a story we've told ourselves? The answer, like the zodiac itself, might just be hiding in plain sight. One of the most fascinating threads woven into the mystery of the Glastonbury Zodiac is its connection to the legendary King Arthur. For centuries, Glastonbury has been tied to Arthurian lore, said to be the mythical Isle of Avalon, where Arthur was laid to rest. But could this ancient landscape hold another secret tied to the once and future king? Some researchers suggest the zodiac's formations aren't just star signs, they're part of a grand, symbolic map guiding Arthur's knights to sacred sites or even hidden treasures. Imagine the Lion of Leo as a marker for Camelot's strength, or Virgo's maiden pointing the way to the Holy Grail's resting place. These interpretations blur the line between myth and geography, hinting that the zodiac might have served as a spiritual guide for seekers of Arthur's legacy. Digging deeper, certain zodiac symbols seem to mirror key Arthurian figures and events. The figure of Sagittarius, the archer, has been linked to stories of Arthur's knights embarking on quests, their paths charted by celestial clues. Others propose that the zodiac's circular design mirrors the round table itself, a unifying symbol of harmony and shared purpose. Could the land itself have been a living storybook, encoding Arthurian ideals into the hills and rivers? The theory gains traction when you consider how medieval lore often intertwined astronomy with destiny. Knights didn't just navigate by roads, they followed signs in the stars, and if the zodiac is real, it might have been their ultimate roadmap. Yet not all scholars agree. Skeptics argue these connections are retroactive, a romantic overlay of Arthurian myth onto a landscape that predates it by millennia. They point out that while Glastonbury's Arthurian ties are strong, no historical evidence directly links the zodiac to the legends, but perhaps that's the point. The power of the Glastonbury Zodiac lies in its ability to inspire wonder, to make us question whether history and myth might sometimes share the same hidden language. Whether you see it as a medieval treasure map or a coincidental arrangement of landforms, one thing is certain: the Zodiac keeps the spirit of Arthur's quest alive, inviting us to keep searching for answers just beyond the horizon. Katherine Maltwood wasn't your typical researcher, an accomplished sculptor and artist with a deep fascination for the esoteric. She stumbled upon the Glastonbury Zodiac almost by accident while working on illustrations for a book about Arthurian legends in the early 1920s. Studying maps of the Somerset countryside, she noticed something extraordinary. The natural contours of the land seemed to form gigantic, overlapping figures resembling the 12 signs of the Zodiac. These weren't subtle shapes, they sprawled across miles, with rivers tracing the curves of Virgo's robes and hills forming the powerful stance of Leo. To Maltwood, this wasn't mere coincidence. She believed she had uncovered an ancient, sacred landscape, deliberately sculpted to mirror the heavens. Her claims were met with fierce skepticism. Academics dismissed her findings as imaginative interpretations, arguing that the human mind naturally seeks patterns in randomness, like seeing animals in clouds. But Maltwood stood firm. She spent years meticulously documenting the alignments, noting how landmarks corresponded with celestial events. For instance, the figure of Aquarius appeared to mark the winter solstice sunrise, while the Taurus formation aligned with key stars in the constellation. To her, these weren't arbitrary connections. They were evidence of a sophisticated astronomical system, possibly created by a lost civilization with knowledge rivaling the pyramids of Egypt or Stonehenge. What made Maltwood's theory even more controversial was her insistence that the Zodiac wasn't just a map of the stars. It was a spiritual blueprint. She speculated that ancient pilgrims walked these paths in ritual, tracing the Zodiac's shapes as a form of meditation or worship. Some modern mystics have even suggested the land retains an energy field, amplifying the Zodiac's symbolic power. Yet despite her passion, Maltwood's work was largely ignored by mainstream scholars during her lifetime. It wasn't until decades later, when new generations of researchers began re-examining her maps with fresh eyes, that the Glastonbury Zodiac gained renewed attention. Today, Maltwood's legacy is as enigmatic as the Zodiac itself. Was she a visionary who cracked an ancient code, or simply an artist who saw what she wanted to see? The debate continues, but one thing is certain: her discovery, whether fact or folklore, has forever altered how we look at the landscape around Glastonbury. It challenges us to ask, if the Zodiac is real, what other secrets might lie hidden in the earth, waiting for someone with the right eyes to see them? Stretching across roughly 30 miles of countryside around Glastonbury, the alleged Zodiac isn't some small carving or hidden symbol. It's a vast, sprawling canvas where the land itself becomes art. Picture each Zodiac sign not as a constellation in the sky, but as an earthly reflection shaped by the curves of rivers, the rise of hills, and even ancient pathways worn into the ground over centuries. Take Virgo, for example, said to be formed by the gentle slopes of Windmill Hill, her flowing robes traced by the meandering course of the River Brue. Then there's Leo, the lion, his powerful silhouette outlined by the contours of Burrow Mump and the ridges of nearby hills, as if standing guard over the landscape. But how does something so massive go unnoticed for so long? That's the intriguing part. The Zodiac's figures aren't standalone drawings, they're woven into the natural and man-made features of the land, visible only when you piece them together like a cosmic jigsaw puzzle. Aquarius, the water-bearer, is believed to align with a network of ancient springs and wells, while Taurus, the bull, mirrors the shape of a prehistoric earthwork near Cadbury Castle. Even man's hand seems to play a role. Centuries-old roads and field boundaries appear to accentuate the outlines, hinting that later generations might have unconsciously preserved or enhanced what was already there. The scale alone is breathtaking, from the archer's bow in Sagittarius formed by the sweeping curve of the river Kerry to the twisting body of Pisces, mirrored in the tangled paths around Godney Moor. Each sign covers miles of terrain. Some researchers argue that these formations align with celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, or the rising of key stars, suggesting the zodiac wasn't just a static map, but a living, breathing calendar. Others point to the precision of the shapes, questioning whether nature alone could create such recognizable forms. After all, seeing a lion in a hill is one thing, but when 12 distinct figures emerge across an entire landscape, it's harder to dismiss as mere chance. Yet for all its grandeur, the Glastonbury Zodiac remains elusive. Unlike Stonehenge or the pyramids, there are no clear-cut tools or records left behind by its creators, if they ever existed. The Zodiac exists in the spaces between what we can prove and what we feel when standing in those rolling fields, where the line between earth and sky, history and myth, begins to blur. Whether it's a deliberate masterpiece or a trick of the land, one thing's certain: it invites us to look closer, to wonder how much of the past is still hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment or the right pair of eyes to reveal it. The debate over the Glastonbury Zodiac isn't just about myths and starry-eyed speculation. It's a clash of hard evidence and hard skepticism. On one side, researchers point to peculiar earthworks and ancient features that seem too perfectly placed to be accidental. Take the towering mound of Burrowmump, long considered part of Leo's outline. Excavations there revealed traces of medieval chapels, but beneath them lie even older layers, postholes and ditches suggesting prehistoric activity. Could these be the remnants of deliberate shaping, or just scattered signs of human settlement over centuries? Similarly, the winding path of the river Brew mirrors Virgo's form so precisely that some argue it was subtly redirected in ancient times to match the constellation. But here's the catch: rivers shift naturally over millennia. Without concrete proof of human intervention, the connection remains tantalizing but unproven. Critics, however, wield the principle of pareidolia like a scalpel, dissecting every claimed alignment. They argue that the human brain is wired to find meaning in randomness. We see faces in clouds, animals in rock formations, and yes, zodiac signs in rolling hills. Modern surveys using LiDAR technology reveal that many of the so-called zodiac lines are natural ridges or medieval field boundaries, their shapes altered by erosion and farming. Even Maltwood's original maps have been scrutinized. Some of her constellations require squinting at distorted landmarks or ignoring features that don't fit the pattern. One archaeologist compared it to connecting dots in the night sky. Once someone draws the lines, the image seems obvious, but those lines are entirely subjective. Yet intriguing pockets of evidence refuse to be dismissed. Near Cadbury Castle, traditionally linked to King Arthur's Camelot, soil analysis uncovered a Neolithic causeway that aligns with the Taurus formation during the spring equinox. And at Glastonbury Tor, the island's most iconic landmark, excavations revealed a labyrinthine terracing pattern that some believe mirrors celestial pathways. Skeptics counter that terraces were common for farming or defense, but mystics ask, why build them in shapes that echo the stars? The truth may lie somewhere between. Ancient Britons were undeniably skilled astronomers. Stonehenge's solstice alignments prove that. If they could map the heavens in stone, why not in earth? The most compelling argument against the zodiac, though, isn't just about missing proof, it's about motive. Creating a 30-mile celestial map would require staggering coordination across generations with no clear practical purpose. Unlike burial sites or fortresses, the zodiac offers no shelter, no stored wealth, no obvious function. Unless, of course, its purpose was purely spiritual, a sacred space where the land itself became a temple. Until someone unearths a tool, a text, or a definitive marker left by its builders, the Glastonbury Zodiac will remain archaeology's most enchanting riddle, a story written in soil waiting for the right hand to turn the page. If the Glastonbury Zodiac truly dates back to prehistoric times, who were the architects behind this colossal celestial map? One compelling theory points to the Neolithic and Bronze Age peoples who inhabited Britain thousands of years before written history. These were societies that left behind monumental structures like Stonehenge and Avebury, proof of their sophisticated understanding of astronomy and their reverence for the cosmos. Could they have also etched the zodiac into the landscape, transforming the very earth into a mirror of the heavens? The idea isn't as far-fetched as it might seem. Across Europe, ancient cultures aligned their sacred sites with solstices, equinoxes, and star patterns, suggesting a shared celestial language. If they could move multi-ton stones with precision, why not shape hills and rivers into a lasting tribute to the sky? The zodiac's potential as an astronomical calendar adds weight to this theory. Imagine standing atop Glastonbury Tor during the summer solstice, watching the sunrise align perfectly with the outline of Leo, or tracing the path of the winter sun as it dips behind the silhouette of Sagittarius. Researchers have noted that several of the zodiac's formations correspond with key solar and lunar events, much like the alignments at Stonehenge. The figure of Virgo, for instance, appears to frame the autumn equinox sunrise, while the curve of Taurus horns aligns with the rising of the Pleiades, a star cluster deeply significant to ancient agricultural societies. These connections hint at a system designed not just to reflect the stars but to track time itself, marking planting seasons, festivals, or spiritual milestones. But here's the puzzle. If the zodiac is ancient, why is there no direct archaeological evidence linking it to Neolithic or Bronze Age builders? Unlike stone circles or burial mounds, the zodiac's features are woven into natural landscapes, leaving no tools, carvings, or artifacts to confirm human involvement. Skeptics argue that without tangible proof, the theory rests on circumstantial patterns. Yet supporters counter that absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. They point to the Durrington Walls near Stonehenge, where recent discoveries revealed a massive prehistoric settlement, proof that ancient Britons manipulated their environment on a grand scale. If they could reshape valleys and dig vast ditches for rituals, why not sculpt the land into celestial symbols? Another layer of intrigue comes from the zodiac's possible spiritual function. Ancient cultures often saw the earth as a living entity, and sacred landscapes were believed to harness cosmic energy. The zodiac's overlapping figures might have served as a pilgrimage route, guiding worshippers through a physical journey mirrored in the heavens. Modern dowsers and geomancers claim to detect energy lines converging at key points within the zodiac, suggesting these sites were chosen deliberately. Of course, such claims are met with skepticism, but they echo a broader truth. The past holds mysteries that science is still learning to decode. The debate over the zodiac's origins may never be settled definitively, but that's part of its enduring allure. Whether it's a prehistoric masterpiece or a later creation inspired by ancient knowledge, the Glastonbury Zodiac challenges us to rethink the capabilities of early societies. It's a reminder that the land beneath our feet might still hold stories we've only begun to imagine, stories written not in ink but in earth and sky. And if the zodiac was indeed an ancient calendar, what else might it have been trying to tell us? Could its symbols encode lost wisdom or warnings meant to outlast civilizations? The answers, if they exist, are still waiting in the windswept hills and quiet rivers of Glastonbury, whispering to those who dare to listen. Glastonbury Abbey's towering ruins hold secrets that stretch far beyond their crumbling stone walls. During the medieval era, this was one of England's most revered spiritual centers, a place where monks studied the stars, copied ancient texts, and whispered of hidden knowledge. Could these learned men have been the masterminds behind the Glastonbury Zodiac? Some historians suggest the Zodiac's outlines aren't prehistoric at all, but a medieval creation woven into the landscape by Abbey scholars as a sacred geometric puzzle. Imagine monks pacing the hills with measuring ropes, aligning earthworks with celestial events, etching their devotion into the very soil. The abbey's own archives hint at this possibility. 12th century chronicles describe elaborate processions through the countryside, where pilgrims followed routes marked by heavenly signs. Could these have been the Zodiac's figures guiding the faithful under the guise of folklore? The timing adds another layer of intrigue. Glastonbury Abbey flourished during a period when Europe was rediscovering classical astronomy. Arabic star charts and Greek texts flooded into monastic libraries, blending with local myths. Monks like the famed chronicler William of Malmesbury wrote of Glastonbury's ancient wonders, hinting at landscapes imbued with cosmic meaning. Even more compelling is the abbey's connection to Joseph of Arimathea, the legendary guardian of the Holy Grail, said to have planted his staff on Glastonbury Tor, where it miraculously blossomed into the thorn tree still venerated today. If the Grail's lore intertwined with the land, might the Zodiac have been part of that mystical tapestry? Medieval art often encoded spiritual truths in symbolism. The Zodiac could have served as a grand, hidden sermon for those who knew how to read it. Yet local folklore complicates the picture. Somerset's oral traditions speak of star-walkers, mystics who traversed the hills at night, tracing patterns only visible from certain vantage points. One tale describes a shepherd in the 1400s who stumbled upon robed figures near Burrow Mump, chanting as they mapped the stars onto the earth. Were these monks conducting secret rituals or solitary visionaries adding to a design centuries older? The blending of Christian and pagan imagery in medieval Glastonbury makes it hard to untangle. The Zodiac's Virgo, for instance, mirrors artistic depictions of the Virgin Mary prevalent in abbey stained glass, while Taurus echoes the biblical ox and ass of nativity scenes. This duality suggests the Zodiac might have been a bridge between worlds, a way to sanctify pre-Christian beliefs within a new faith. The skeptics, as always, have their say. No surviving medieval manuscript directly mentions the Zodiac, and abbey records focus on practical matters like land disputes and relic sales, but absence of evidence isn't proof. Medieval monks were masters of allegory. If the Zodiac existed, they might have guarded it as esoteric knowledge reserved for initiates. After all, Glastonbury's abbots were political players, their institution a target during upheavals like the dissolution of the monasteries. Any record of a pagan-tinged star map would have been dangerous to preserve. What's harder to dismiss are the physical clues. The abbey's original charter references boundary markers matching Zodiac landmarks, and the medieval road network snakes unnervingly close to several celestial figures. Coincidence or a breadcrumb trail left by deliberate designers, whether crafted by monks or merely adapted by them, the Zodiac's medieval connections reveal a time when earth and sky were seen as halves of a divine whole. Standing in the shadow of the abbey's broken arches, it's easy to picture hooded figures kneeling in the grass, charting the heavens not on parchment, but on the living land itself. Their legacy, if it exists, lingers in the way the morning mist curls around the Tor like a veil, hinting at secrets not lost, merely waiting. Today, the Glastonbury Zodiac pulses with a different kind of life, one shaped not by ancient builders or medieval monks, but by modern seekers drawn to its mystique. New Age communities have claimed this landscape as a powerhouse of spiritual energy, a place where the veil between worlds feels tantalizingly thin. Walk through these fields during the summer solstice, and you might encounter groups meditating in the shadow of the Tor, their hands pressed to the earth as if listening for whispers from the past. Others perform elaborate rituals at the Zodiac's key points, convinced they're tapping into ley lines, those invisible threads of energy said to crisscross the globe, connecting sacred sites from Stonehenge to the pyramids. To them, the Zodiac isn't just a relic, it's a living, breathing portal. Ley line hunters argue that Glastonbury sits at a convergence of these energetic pathways, with the Zodiac's figures marking precise nodes where the Earth's power is most potent. Dowsers report compass needles spinning wildly near the Taurus formation, while visitors describe sudden surges of emotion standing atop Virgo's heart. Skeptics roll their eyes, but the anecdotes pile up. Healers claiming to channel energy from the land, artists inspired by vivid visions while camping near Aquarius. Even the local tourism board leans into it, offering energy maps for pilgrims eager to walk the Zodiac's path like a labyrinth toward enlightenment. The rituals themselves are as varied as the beliefs behind them. Some follow Katherine Maltwood's original maps like sacred texts, tracing the Zodiac's outlines with measured footsteps, a practice they call earth walking. Others blend Celtic traditions with modern mysticism, leaving offerings of crystals at key alignments or chanting under full moons to activate the land's memory. One group even reenacts Arthurian quests, believing the Zodiac holds clues to Avalon's hidden gates. What unites them is the conviction that Glastonbury isn't just a place but a participant, an active force in their spiritual journeys. Science, of course, offers alternative explanations. Geologists attribute strange sensations to underground water currents or magnetic rock formations, while psychologists cite the power of suggestion in sacred spaces. Yet the deeper question remains, why here? Why does this patch of countryside, more than any other, ignite such fervent belief? Perhaps it's the weight of accumulated stories, Arthur, Joseph of Arimathea, the abbey's lost secrets layering the land with meaning until myth itself becomes a kind of energy. Or maybe, as the New Age crowd insists, there's something in the soil that defies measurement, something that hums to those willing to hear it. Whether you approach the Zodiac with a pendulum or a pinch of salt, its modern allure is undeniable. It's a mirror for our longing for connection, for magic, for proof that the world still holds wonders science can't yet box and label. And in that sense, the Glastonbury Zodiac's greatest power might be its ability to make us wonder, to keep us searching, long after the last ley line fades from the map. Long before Katherine Maltwood sketched her first map of the Glastonbury Zodiac, whispers of its existence were already woven into the fabric of Somerset's folklore. Locals spoke of the sleeping giants, hills that shifted shape under the moonlight, revealing figures sprawled across the land like guardians of an old, forgotten dream. One particularly enduring tale tells of a shepherd boy in the 1700s who got lost near Wiriol Hill during a thick mist. When the fog lifted, he swore he'd seen a woman made of starlight standing atop the ridge, her outstretched arms mirroring the curve of the river Brue below. To villagers, this was no mere vision, it was Virgo, the celestial maiden, a sign that the land itself remembered something older than memory. These stories aren't confined to dusty archives, they live in the oral traditions of Glastonbury's families. Pub patrons might recount the legend of the Lion's Roar, where Burrow Mump is said to tremble during storms, echoing the myth that Leo's spirit stirs when the constellation aligns overhead. Even the names of places carry echoes of the Zodiac. The village of Godney, nestled near the Pisces formation, was once called Gwydian's Eye in local dialect, a nod to the Celtic god of enchantment, whose myths often intertwined with the stars. Such details suggest the Zodiac's patterns weren't just observed by outsiders like Maltwood, but subtly preserved in the language and lore of those who have lived here for centuries. But here's where folklore meets friction. While these tales lend a poetic credibility to the Zodiac's ancient roots, historians caution against conflating myth with fact. Many of the stories were recorded long after the Norman conquest, reshaped by Christian symbolism and medieval romance. The Starlight Woman of Wiriol Hill, for instance, bears a striking resemblance to later Virgin Mary apparitions. Yet there's an intriguing counterpoint. Some of the oldest surviving Celtic chants, passed down through bardic lineages, reference the great wheel beneath the feet, a phrase that could describe the Zodiac's circular design. Even the Arthurian connection resurfaces in local rhymes, where knights are said to ride by the bull's horn and the archer's bow, directions that eerily match Taurus and Sagittarius in Maltwood's maps. The most compelling oral accounts come from Somerset's traveling communities whose ancestors camped along the Zodiac's alleged pathways. Romani elders speak of star tracks, invisible trails linking sacred mounds where their grandparents left offerings of silver coins and herbs. One elder, recorded in the 1950s, described a childhood ritual of placing stones along the river Kerry's bends to keep Sagittarius' arrow flying true. Coincidence, perhaps, but when paired with archaeological finds like Bronze Age votive offerings unearthed near these very riverbanks, the line between legend and history blurs. What makes these oral traditions so tantalizing isn't just their persistence, but their consistency. Across generations and cultural shifts, certain motifs repeat. The land as a mirror of the sky, the figures sleeping until called, the idea that walking the Zodiac's path might awaken something dormant. Whether these stories are fragments of a prehistoric worldview or later imaginings grafted onto the landscape, they've become part of the Zodiac's living mystery. And that, in itself, is a kind of proof not of ancient engineers, but of the human instinct to find meaning in the shapes of the earth, to keep telling the story until the story becomes true. The landscape around Glastonbury is a tapestry woven by time, rolling hills carved by glaciers, rivers that have shifted their courses over millennia, and ridges shaped by wind and rain. At first glance, the Zodiac's figures seem to emerge effortlessly from these natural contours. The silhouette of Leo, for instance, follows the rise of Burrowmump, a solitary hill that stands like a sentinel over the plains. Its slopes, formed by Ice Age deposits, create a profile uncannily reminiscent of a reclining lion. Nearby, the River Bru's meandering path traces the flowing robes of Virgo, its bends shaped by centuries of erosion. To skeptics, these resemblances are pure coincidence, the result of pareidolia, our brain's knack for finding familiar shapes in randomness. After all, rivers twist, hills erode, and nature's chaos often creates patterns that tease the imagination. But look closer, and the picture grows more complex. Some of the Zodiac's alleged features defy easy explanation. Take the figure of Sagittarius, formed not just by the curve of the river Kerry, but by a series of ancient earthworks that seem to accentuate the archer's bow. Archaeological surveys reveal these ridges aren't natural. They're the remnants of medieval field boundaries, possibly built atop even older ditches. Similarly, the horns of Taurus align with a Neolithic causeway near Cadbury Castle, a man-made structure dating back thousands of years. These overlaps raise a tantalizing question. Did later generations unconsciously preserve, or even enhance, a design they no longer understood? Rivers can shift on their own, but when human hands reshape the land to mirror celestial patterns, the line between nature and intention blurs. Then there's the sheer scale of the Zodiac. Covering over 30 square miles, its figures rely on landmarks separated by vast distances. For Virgo's girdle to align with the autumn equinox sunrise, for example, observers would need to stand at precise vantage points miles apart. Natural landforms might create isolated resemblances, but coordinating multiple figures across such distances strains the limits of chance. Geologists point out that Somerset's bedrock, a mix of limestone and clay, erodes unevenly, creating dramatic contours that could inspire star-mapped interpretations. Yet even they concede that certain alignments, like the ley lines New Age enthusiasts swear by, follow fault lines or magnetic anomalies that ancient peoples might have sensed and marked. The most compelling argument for human intervention lies in the water. Glastonbury's Zodiac is laced with springs, wells, and artificial channels, some dating to the Iron Age. The figure of Aquarius, the water-bearer, aligns with a network of these sacred pools, including the Chalice Well, where iron-rich water stains the stone blood red. Coincidence or deliberate symbolism? Hydrologists note that many of these water sources were modified, stone-lined, diverted, or ritualized, suggesting purposeful curation. Even the Zodiac's circular layout mirrors prehistoric irrigation systems found elsewhere in Europe, where water was channeled to reflect cosmic patterns. Ultimately, the land itself holds no definitive answers. It whispers possibilities of glacial valleys repurposed as celestial markers, of rivers nudged into symbolic shapes, of hills that became temples under open skies. Whether the Glastonbury Zodiac was shaped by human hands or merely interpreted by them, its power lies in this ambiguity. It challenges us to see the landscape not just as dirt and rock, but as a parchment where nature and myth share the same ink. The Glastonbury Zodiac isn't alone in its celestial mystery. Across the globe, other landscapes whisper of similar star-mapped secrets, none more striking than the Kingston Zodiac in Jamaica. Discovered in the 1920s by mystic and artist H.G. Walters, this sprawling formation stretches across the hills and valleys surrounding Kingston, its figures like Glastonbury's woven into rivers, ridges, and roads. But where Glastonbury's Zodiac is steeped in Arthurian lore and Neolithic speculation, Kingston's pulses with a different energy, blending African cosmology, Taino symbols, and colonial history into a vibrant tapestry. Both Zodiacs share a startling precision. Kingston's Leo, for instance, mirrors Glastonbury's with a lion-shaped hill, while its Virgo aligns with the curve of the Hope River, echoing the Bruce role in Somerset. Yet the differences are just as revealing. Kingston's Zodiac incorporates constellations unique to the Caribbean sky, like the Southern Cross, and its figures often overlap with sites tied to maroon resistance, hidden villages where escaped slaves once sought refuge. This hints at a deeper layer, celestial patterns as maps of liberation, guiding the oppressed under the cover of star lore. Where Glastonbury's Zodiac may have been a spiritual calendar, Kingston's feels like a living cipher encoding stories of survival. Even the methods of discovery diverge. While Katherine Maltwood relied on aerial surveys and historical maps, Walters claimed his insights came through dreams, a testament to the Zodiac's role as both a physical and psychic landscape. Beyond Jamaica, echoes of earthbound Zodiacs appear in places like Bohemia's Krivaclot Castle, where medieval earthworks sketch the 12 signs, and China's Longshan Mountains, where ancient terraces form a dragon-shaped constellation. What unites these sites isn't just their celestial mimicry, but the universal human urge to imprint the cosmos onto the land, a bridge between heaven and earth. Some cultures, like the Navajo with their sacred sand paintings, created temporary star maps, while others, like the builders of Glastonbury and Kingston, carved theirs into the very bones of the terrain. The most compelling parallel lies in the skepticism they've faced. Just as academics dismiss Glastonbury's Zodiac as pareidolia, Kingston's has been relegated to colonial-era folklore. Yet the persistence of these patterns across continents suggests something deeper, a shared language of the land spoken in hills and rivers, waiting for those who know how to listen. Whether prayer, prophecy, or pure imagination, these zodiacs remind us that the sky has always been more than a ceiling, it's a story, and the earth its most enduring page. Rising dramatically from the Somerset Plains, Glastonbury Tor isn't just a hill, it's a beacon. Its solitary silhouette, crowned by the ruins of a medieval chapel, dominates the landscape like a sentinel keeping watch over the zodiac's mysteries. Many believe this enigmatic mound forms the heart of the Aquarius figure in the Glastonbury Zodiac, with its terraced slopes mirroring the water-bearer's flowing urn. But the Tor's significance runs far deeper than celestial symbolism. Step onto its winding path, and you're treading ground steeped in 2,000 years of spiritual longing, where Celtic myth, Arthurian legend, and modern pilgrimage collide. Long before the zodiac theory emerged, the Tor was sacred to the ancient Britons. They called it Unis Widrin, the Isle of Glass, a name evoking its otherworldly glow when mist shrouds the lowlands. Celtic druids supposedly gathered here to observe the movements of the heavens, aligning their rituals with the solstices. The Tor's unique geology adds to its mystique. Its terraces, once thought to be medieval farming strips, now puzzle archaeologists. Some suggest they form a three-dimensional labyrinth, a spiraling path designed for ceremonial ascents. Others point to their alignment with key stars in the Aquarius constellation, hinting that the Tor wasn't just part of the Zodiac but its focal point, a place where earth and sky ritually married. Then there's Avalon. Medieval chroniclers identified Glastonbury Tor as the mythical Isle of Avalon, where King Arthur was taken to heal after his final battle. The connection isn't purely literary. In the 1200s, monks at Glastonbury Abbey claimed to have discovered Arthur and Guinevere's bones near the Tor, a find widely believed to be a political stunt, yet the legend endured. The Tor's role in Arthurian lore dovetails with its zodiac link. If Aquarius represents renewal and divine knowledge, it's fitting that Arthur's journey ended here. Modern mystics take it further, proposing that the Tor's energy grid aligns with Aquarius's astrological age, an era of enlightenment we're said to be entering. Water is another thread in this tangled tale. Aquarius governs flows, and the Tor sits amid springs revered since antiquity. The most famous, Chalice Well, runs red with iron-rich water, symbolizing the Grail's eternal blood. Pilgrims still drink from it, seeking healing or vision. Even the land's shape plays into the theme. Before medieval drainage, the Tor rose from marshland like an island, its reflection doubling the water-bearer's vessel. Was this intentional? Did ancient engineers sculpt the terrain to amplify the symbolism, or did nature conspire to create a shrine? Today, the Tor draws everyone from historians to energy healers. Some climb at dawn to meditate where druids once stood. Others come at twilight when the setting sun casts the zodiac's shadows long across the vale. Whether you see it as a Neolithic observatory, a medieval allegory, or a New Age power spot, the Tor refuses to be pinned down. It remains what it's always been, a question mark carved into the earth, inviting us to look deeper. Every figure in the Glastonbury Zodiac holds a story, a layer of meaning woven into the land like threads in a cosmic tapestry. Take Virgo, the maiden, sprawled across the gentle curves of Windmill Hill with the river Brue tracing the folds of her robe. In ancient traditions, Virgo symbolizes harvest and purity, fitting for a region where fertile fields once fed entire communities. Her placement near Glastonbury Tor suggests a guardian role, watching over the land's bounty. But dig deeper, and her outstretched arm seems to point toward the ruins of the abbey, as if linking Earth's abundance with divine grace. Could this alignment have been a Neolithic farmer's prayer for fertile soil, or a medieval monk's homage to the Virgin Mary? The duality speaks to how symbols evolve, carrying old magic into new beliefs. Then there's Leo, the lion, his powerful form etched by the rugged slopes of Burrow Mump. In celestial lore, Leo represents strength and sovereignty, traits echoed in local legends of King Arthur's reign. The lion's position overlooking the Vale of Avalon feels deliberate, as if standing sentinel over a sacred kingdom. Astrologers note that Leo rules the heart, and intriguingly, a cluster of ancient healing springs bubbles near his paws. This overlap hints at a deeper connection. The lion not just as a protector, but as a symbol of vitality, his presence marking a place where the land itself was believed to restore the sick and weary. The water-bearer, Aquarius, offers another puzzle. Centered around Glastonbury Tor, his figure is intertwined with the flow of sacred springs like Chalice Well. Aquarius governs enlightenment and collective wisdom, themes mirrored in the Tor's role as a pilgrimage site for seekers across millennia. His upturned urn aligns with the Tor's terraces, suggesting a deliberate design, a cascading fountain of knowledge, both physical and spiritual. Some researchers propose that the Tor's spiral path mimics Aquarius's association with cyclical renewal, a stairway for initiates ascending toward higher understanding. Taurus the bull charges across the landscape near Cadbury Castle, a site long tied to Camelot. In ancient agrarian societies, Taurus marked the planting season, his horns symbolizing the plow. The bull's proximity to Neolithic causeways and fertile plains reinforces this practical role. Yet there's a warrior's edge here, too. Taurus is also a sign of stubborn courage. Local tales speak of Arthur's knights gathering under the bull's gaze, perhaps drawing strength from the land's unyielding energy. The juxtaposition of fertility and fortitude captures the duality of survival in ancient times, to nurture and to defend. Even the lesser-seen signs whisper secrets. Pisces, twin fish swimming through the marshlands of Godney Moor, evokes themes of intuition and hidden depths. Medieval monks revered fish as symbols of faith, while earlier cultures saw them as guides to the underworld. The fish's looping path mirrors the labyrinthine waterways of the Somerset levels, a reminder that not all journeys move in straight lines. Meanwhile, Sagittarius the archer draws his bow along the river Kerry, a celestial hunter forever aiming toward the horizon. His stance aligns with winter solstice sunsets, a possible marker for rituals honoring the sun's rebirth. What emerges is a landscape alive with intention, where each sign feels less like a random shape and more like a chapter in an earthy grimoire. Whether mapping agricultural cycles, encoding spiritual truths, or mirroring the stars for navigation, the Glastonbury Zodiac symbols pulse with a logic that transcends time. They challenge us to read the land not just with our eyes, but with the imagination of those who might have first traced these lines, people for whom the sky was not a distant void, but a mirror held up to the earth. For all its mystique, the Glastonbury Zodiac faces fierce opposition from skeptics who see it as little more than an elaborate case of wishful thinking. They argue that what some call an ancient celestial map is really just the human brain doing what it does best, finding meaning in randomness. Psychologists call this pareidolia, the tendency to perceive familiar shapes where none exist. We see faces in clouds, animals in rock formations, and yes, zodiac signs in rolling hills. The mind craves order, especially in places already steeped in legend like Glastonbury, where every stone seems to whisper of forgotten magic. But is that all? The zodiac is a collective mirage projected onto the landscape by generations of hopeful seekers. Critics point to the zodiac's alleged inconsistencies. Many of the figures require significant stretches of the imagination to recognize, with some landmarks forced into unnatural shapes to fit the pattern. The outline of Libra, for instance, depends heavily on modern roads and hedgerows, features that didn't exist when the zodiac was supposedly created. Even more damning, early aerial surveys reveal that some of Maltwood's original interpretations relied on temporary features like plowed fields or seasonal water channels, which shift over time. If the zodiac were truly ancient, wouldn't its markers be more permanent, carved stones, earthworks, or at least something beyond the subjective tracing of river bends? The timing of the zodiac's discovery also raises eyebrows. Katherine Maltwood unveiled her theories in the 1920s, an era obsessed with spiritualism and lost civilizations. Just a few years earlier, the world had been captivated by the discovery of the Piltdown Man, a paleontological hoax that fooled scientists for decades. Against this backdrop, could the zodiac have been another product of its time, a reflection of post-war longing for connection to a purer, wiser past? Even Maltwood's artistic background invites scrutiny. As a sculptor trained to see forms in raw materials, might she have been predisposed to spot shapes others would overlook? Then there's the silence of history. Glastonbury's medieval monks were meticulous record keepers, yet none of their chronicles mention a giant star chart etched into the land. Archaeologists, too, have found no tools, carvings, or artifacts suggesting intentional zodiac construction. In contrast, sites like Stonehenge or Avebury leave behind undeniable proof of human effort: standing stones, post holes, and burial goods. The zodiac supporters counter that absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, but skeptics argue that extraordinary claims demand extraordinary proof. When every proposed alignment could just as easily be coincidence, the burden shifts to believers to prove intent. Yet the debate isn't just about facts, it's about how we relate to the land itself. The Zodiac's critics often approach the landscape as a blank slate, a thing to be measured and catalogued. Its defenders, though, see the earth as a living story where meaning isn't just inscribed but felt. Even if the Zodiac is a modern myth, does that make it any less powerful? After all, Glastonbury's legends from Arthur to the Grail have always thrived in the space between history and imagination. Perhaps the Zodiac's real magic lies not in its origins, but in its ability to make us look at the world with wonder, to remember that every hill and stream might still hold stories waiting to be told. Whether hoax or masterpiece, it challenges us to ask, in the end, does it matter who drew the lines if the map still leads to awe? In an age where satellites map every inch of the planet and lasers reveal buried cities beneath jungle canopies, the Glastonbury Zodiac faces its toughest test yet: modern science. Over the past 2 decades, researchers armed with aerial photography, ground-penetrating radar, and LiDAR technology have scoured Somerset's landscape, searching for definitive proof that these sprawling celestial shapes were intentionally carved into the earth. The results, a mosaic of tantalizing hints and frustrating dead ends that refuse to settle the debate. LiDAR, light detection and ranging, has been a game-changer, stripping away vegetation and modern structures to reveal the bare bones of the landscape. When trained on Glastonbury's hills, the scans showed subtle terraces and embankments too precise to be natural erosion. Near the Taurus Formation, LiDAR uncovered a series of concentric ditches aligning with the bull's horns, resembling Neolithic cattle enclosures found elsewhere in Britain. Even more striking, the data revealed buried post holes along the River Kerry's curves, potential markers for the archer's bow in Sagittarius. But here's the catch: these features could date anywhere from the Bronze Age to medieval field systems, leaving their purpose maddeningly ambiguous. Aerial surveys add another layer of intrigue. High-resolution photos captured during drought years, when buried earthworks resurface as crop marks, show faint geometric patterns overlapping with Maltwood's Zodiac maps. Near Windmill Hill, the silhouette of Virgo appears accentuated by ancient lynch, its medieval farming terraces that eerily trace her outstretched arm. Archaeoastronomers have crunched the numbers, confirming that several of these alignments correspond with solstice sunrises and major lunar standstills. Yet critics counter that medieval farmers often plowed along astronomical lines for practical reasons, muddying the waters between sacred design and agrarian necessity. The most heated clashes center on chronology. Radiocarbon dating of soil samples from Zodiac-associated sites yields a frustrating scatter of dates, some Neolithic, some Iron Age, others squarely medieval. Without a consistent time frame, proving intentional construction becomes a nightmare. One theory gaining traction is that the Zodiac evolved piecemeal, with later cultures building upon or repurposing older landmarks. Imagine Bronze Age herdsmen marking Taurus with stone cairns, Roman settlers reinforcing Leo's outline with roads, and medieval monks redirecting streams to echo Aquarius's waves. This patchwork approach could explain why the Zodiac feels both ancient and oddly fluid. Despite technological leaps, the Zodiac's defenders and doubters remain locked in stalemate. For every LiDAR anomaly that excites believers, skeptics point to gaps like the complete absence of tool marks or quarries needed to reshape hills on such a scale. Meanwhile, digital reconstructions of the landscape 5,000 years ago show rivers flowing along entirely different paths, undermining claims of prehistoric hydrological engineering. The truth, as always with Glastonbury, may lie somewhere in the mist between what we can prove and what we still long to believe. What these modern surveys ultimately reveal isn't just a puzzle about the past, but a reflection of how we search for meaning. Technology can map soil layers and star alignments, but it can't measure the human instinct to see stories in the land. Whether the Glastonbury Zodiac is a deliberate masterpiece or a canvas for our collective imagination, its power endures not in the dirt but in the way it keeps us looking up and down and wondering. The Glastonbury Zodiac's enigmatic allure hasn't just captivated historians and mystics, it's woven itself into the very fabric of art and literature, becoming a muse for creators across centuries. Writers, painters, and filmmakers have all drawn from its cosmic tapestry, transforming the landscape's whispers into novels, canvases, and films that blur the line between myth and reality. One of the earliest literary echoes appears in William Blake's visionary poetry, his 1804 line, "And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green?" Later adapted into the hymn, Jerusalem resonates with the Zodiac's themes of sacred geography. Though Blake never named Glastonbury directly, scholars note how his descriptions of a starry zodiac over England's hills mirror Maltwood's later maps, suggesting the land's celestial reputation predates its formal discovery. 20th century literature embraced the zodiac more explicitly. John Mitchell's 1969 book The View Over Atlantis reimagined Glastonbury's landscape as part of a global network of ley lines and earth energies, weaving the zodiac into a new age manifesto that inspired generations of seekers. Authors like Dion Fortune and Marion Bradley folded its symbolism into their occult novels, casting the zodiac as a living spellbook where every hill and river held arcane power. Even mainstream fiction couldn't resist its pull. In Peter Ackroyd's Hoax, the zodiac's hidden geometries echo in the sinister architecture of London's churches, linking Somerset's mysteries to darker urban legends. Visual artists, too, have been spellbound. Painter Ithell Colquhoun's surrealist works from the 1950s depict the zodiac's figures as spectral giants emerging from the soil, their bodies formed by contorted trees and shadowed valleys. More recently, digital artists like Dan Holdsworth have used drone photography to reimagine the zodiac as a shimmering overlay of light and land, making the invisible outlines visible for the first time. These creations aren't just interpretations, they're acts of reenchantment, insisting that the landscape still holds secrets waiting to be seen. Documentaries have played their part in bringing the zodiac to wider audiences. The BBC's The Glastonbury Zodiac, a modern mystery, blended aerial footage with interviews from archaeologists and druids, leaving viewers to decide where science ended and legend began. Meanwhile, indie filmmakers like Sharon Krause have treated the zodiac as a character in its own right, crafting ethereal short films where pilgrims trace its paths like actors in an earthly celestial drama. Perhaps the most surprising influence lies in music. Progressive rock bands like Yes and Hawkwind wove zodiac imagery into album art and lyrics, while modern folk musicians compose ballads about walking the starry fields. Even Glastonbury Festival, though unrelated to the zodiac, channels its spirit, a temporary city rising once a year where music and myth collide under open skies. From Blake's ink-stained pages to drone-lit digital canvases, the zodiac's legacy proves that some mysteries refuse to stay buried. They resurface in every medium, inviting each new generation to map their own meanings onto the land. Whether as muse or mirage, the Glastonbury Zodiac endures not just in soil and stone, but in the stories we can't stop telling about it. Glastonbury's streets hum with more than just history, they pulse with the footsteps of modern-day pilgrims. Every year, thousands flock to this corner of Somerset, not just for the Abbey ruins or the Tor's sweeping views, but to walk the living lines of the Glastonbury Zodiac. For some, it's a spiritual journey, for others, sheer curiosity. But one thing's undeniable: the Zodiac has transformed this quiet town into a magnet for seekers, turning ancient myths into a thriving cultural economy. Bookshops overflow with Zodiac-themed guides, cafes serve astrological lattes named after the signs, and shop windows display crystals aligned with the Zodiac's energy points. It's as if the land's mystery has seeped into the very bricks of the town, drawing visitors who yearn to touch something older than memory. The Zodiacs pull peaks during annual events like the Glastonbury Symposium, where lectures on Earth mysteries share the stage with guided Zodiac walks. These aren't your typical tourist strolls. Led by dowsers or local historians, groups traverse fields and riverbanks, stopping to meditate at Virgo's heart or channel energy at Leo's pause. One guide recounts how a Japanese tourist burst into tears upon reaching Aquarius's marker near the tour, claiming the sight unlocked a childhood dream. Such moments underscore the Zodiac's emotional resonance. It's more than a theory. It's an experience that blurs the line between geography and revelation. Economically, the Zodiac's influence is staggering. B&Bs advertise rooms with Zodiac views, artisans sell pottery etched with celestial motifs, and even the local brewery offers a starborn ale inspired by Sagittarius. A shopkeeper on the high street laughs as she adjusts a display of Zodiac postcards. "Winter used to be dead here," she says. "Now we've got solstice pilgrims year-round." Skeptics might dismiss it as commercial hype, but the numbers don't lie. Zodiac-themed tourism pumps millions into Glastonbury annually, funding everything from road repairs to school programs. The land's legends, it seems, have become its lifeline. Yet the Zodiac's impact isn't just financial, it's cultural. Locals who once rolled their eyes at star walkers now share family stories of strange lights over Windmill Hill or odd coincidences near Burrow Mump. The annual Zodiac Festival blends folk music with astrology workshops where third-generation farmers rub shoulders with crystal healers. "My granddad swore those hills were haunted," one farmer tells the crowd. Turns out they were just waiting. Even the town's youth have embraced the legacy, with school projects mapping the Zodiac's geometry or retelling its tales in street art. Not everyone celebrates the influx. Some longtime residents grumble about crowded lanes and rising rents, wary of Glastonbury becoming a mystic Disneyland. Conservationists warn that foot traffic erodes fragile sites like the Chalice Wells terraces, and scholars debate whether the Zodiac's commodification dilutes its spiritual weight. But perhaps the sharpest tension lies between seekers and skeptics. Guided tour groups occasionally cross paths with archaeology students rolling their eyes at energy vortex talk. Yet even these clashes spark dialogue, turning pubs into lively forums where pints are sipped over debates about pareidolia versus sacred design. At dusk, the tour's silhouette looms over a scattering of lanterns. Nighttime Zodiac tours setting out. Visitors clutch maps annotated with Maltwood's lines, their faces lit by phone screens and votive candles. Whether they leave convinced or bemused, the Zodiac's power lingers. It's not just a story about the land, it's a mirror held up to those who walk it. And as the town's fortunes rise on the tide of celestial tourism, one question lingers: are the pilgrims drawing energy from the Zodiac, or is the Zodiac drawing its life from them? Among the countless theories swirling around the Glastonbury Zodiac, some of the most electrifying and controversial come from the fringes of speculation. What if those colossal earthbound constellations weren't crafted by ancient Britons or medieval monks, but by visitors from beyond our world? Proponents of the extraterrestrial hypothesis point to the Zodiac's staggering precision, arguing that aligning landforms across 30 miles would require technology or knowledge beyond Bronze Age capabilities. They highlight formations like the perfectly curved bow of Sagittarius, which mirrors star positions with uncanny accuracy, too perfect, some say, to be the work of human hands alone. Ancient astronaut theorists draw parallels to sites like Peru's Nazca lines or Egypt's pyramids, suggesting a shared blueprint from starfaring architects who used Earth's landscapes as a celestial chalkboard. But the alien angle isn't the only radical proposal. Another camp believes the Zodiac is the handiwork of a lost civilization, one far more advanced than historians acknowledge. These theorists cite Plato's account of Atlantis or the sinking of Doggerland, a vast Mesolithic landmass now beneath the North Sea. Could survivors of a forgotten cataclysm have encoded their star lore into Somerset's hills as a warning or beacon? Glastonbury's labyrinthine underground springs fuel this idea. Some claim the water's mineral composition matches legends of Atlantis's healing pools. The Zodiac's alignment with solstices and equinoxes adds weight to the argument, suggesting a sophistication rivaling modern astronomy knowledge that mainstream science insists shouldn't exist in prehistoric Britain. Of course, these theories face fierce pushback. Archaeologists note that while the Zodiac scale is impressive, it lacks the hallmarks of advanced engineering: no precision-cut stones, no metal tools, no remnants of machinery. The alien argument stumbles on Occam's razor. Why would interstellar beings encode star maps in a format only visible from the air millennia later? As for lost civilizations, sediment cores from Glastonbury's marshes show no evidence of catastrophic floods or cultural discontinuity. The most damning counterpoint: every proposed advanced feature of the Zodiac alignments, water symbolism, fits neatly within the known spiritual practices of Neolithic and Bronze Age societies, who are far more capable than modern biases assume. Yet the allure of these fringe ideas persists, amplified by pop culture and conspiracy forums. TV shows like Ancient Aliens dramatize the Zodiac's impossible geometry, while YouTube deep dives splice aerial footage with speculative soundtracks. Local tour guides chuckle about visitors arriving with EMF meters, convinced the tour is a dormant stargate. And at Glastonbury's annual Alternative Archaeology conference, debates rage between star-charting hobbyists and exasperated academics. What's fascinating isn't just the theories themselves, but why they resonate. The Zodiac's gaps in provenance act like Rorschach tests. People see what they need to see. For some, it's proof we're not alone. For others, evidence of humanity's forgotten potential. The truth, as always in Glastonbury, may be less sensational but no less profound, a testament to how even the wildest speculations keep us looking up and digging deeper. For centuries, the Glastonbury Zodiac has been a spiritual Rorschach test, a sprawling canvas where believers of every tradition have seen reflections of their deepest truths. Pagan traditions view these earthbound constellations as remnants of a druidic star religion, where initiates once walked the paths of Virgo or Leo in sacred procession, aligning their bodies with celestial forces. Modern druids still gather at Burrow Mump during the summer solstice, interpreting the lion's silhouette as a symbol of the sun's zenith, its mane glowing like fire at dawn. They speak of the Zodiac as a labyrinth without walls, where each turn of the river or curve of a hill was designed to guide seekers through cycles of death and rebirth, a belief echoed in Neolithic burial sites nearby that align with the Zodiac's Taurus formation. Christian interpretations, however, paint a different portrait. Medieval monks may have repurposed these ancient symbols, overlaying them with biblical narratives. The figure of Virgo, for instance, takes on new life as the Virgin Mary, her outstretched arm pointing toward Glastonbury Abbey's once magnificent Lady Chapel. Local lore tells of monks quietly redirecting pilgrims along zodiacal paths during feast days, turning pagan star walking into Marian processions. Even Chalice Well's iron-rich waters, revered by pre-Christian cultures as a portal to the underworld, became a site of Grail legend, its rust-red flow symbolizing Joseph of Arimathea's holy relic. This synthesis of traditions suggests the Zodiac wasn't erased by Christianity but baptized into new meaning, a pattern seen across Europe's sacred landscapes. The Zodiac's potential as an initiation site sparks debate across both camps. Occultists like Dion Fortune believe the formations corresponded to esoteric gateways, where adepts underwent ritual trials standing vigil in Aquarius's springs or fasting atop Leo's hill to achieve visionary states. Physical evidence is scant, but curious parallels exist. The terraces on Glastonbury Tor, long thought to be medieval, mirror the spiral paths of Cretan initiation labyrinths, while the Pisces formation's watery path recall baptismal rites. Even skeptics admit the zodiac's geography creates natural thresholds, valleys that amplify sound during chants, hilltops where the horizon dissolves into sky features that could turn a simple walk into a transformative journey. Prophecy weaves through these interpretations like a silver thread. Some New Age mystics insist the zodiac encodes apocalyptic warnings, with the figure of Sagittarius's arrow pointing to celestial events like the alignment of Jupiter and Saturn in 2020. More grounded scholars note historical precedent. Tudor-era astrologer John Dee studied Glastonbury's landscape in the 1500s, convinced it held encrypted predictions about England's destiny. Whether these claims hold water matters less than their persistence. The human urge to read destiny in the land's contours remains unshakable. What unites these diverse readings is the zodiac's role as a mirror. Pagans see a star-cloaked earth goddess, Christians a divine blueprint, mystics an energy grid, all reflecting their yearning to bridge heaven and earth. Perhaps that's the zodiac's true power, not in proving who's right, but in reminding us that sacred spaces are palimpsests, endlessly rewritten by those who walk them with reverence. The soil of Glastonbury doesn't settle these debates, it nourishes them, ensuring every generation finds its own truth written in the rivers and hills. One of the most mesmerizing aspects of the Glastonbury Zodiac is how its sprawling figures appear to dance with the seasons. Stand at Windmill Hill during the autumn equinox, and you might witness the first rays of sunrise align perfectly with Virgo's outstretched arm, as if the land itself were marking the shift from summer to harvest. Similar reports surface at Burrow-Mump, where the crest of Leo's mane catches the solstice sun, casting a golden glow across the valley. These alignments aren't just poetic, they're precise, sparking debates over whether ancient builders intentionally designed the zodiac as a colossal celestial calendar, or if modern observers are connecting dots that were never meant to meet. Take the case of the winter solstice, when the setting sun slips behind the silhouette of Sagittarius's drawn bow, creating the illusion of an arrow loosed into the twilight. Archaeoastronomers have measured this alignment to within half a degree of accuracy, a margin so narrow it defies easy dismissal as chance. Even more compelling are the lunar standstill's rare moments when the moon reaches its farthest northern or southern point in the sky. Near Cadbury Castle, the horns of Taurus appear to frame the major lunar standstill every 18.6 years, a cycle well documented in Neolithic sites like Stonehenge. If intentional, this would suggest the zodiac's creators possessed not just observational skills but a sophisticated grasp of celestial mechanics, tracking movements invisible to the casual stargazer. Yet skeptics counter that Somerset's landscape is riddled with enough natural ridges and waterways to guarantee some coincidental overlaps. They point out that statistically, given 30 miles of varied terrain, a handful of alignments are inevitable, like finding faces in clouds. Modern simulations using randomized landforms show similar matches to solstice events, suggesting pareidolia might be at play. Even the zodiac's proponents admit some alignments require creative interpretation. Libra's scales, for instance, rely on medieval field boundaries that postdate any hypothetical Bronze Age construction, muddying the timeline. What tilts the scales toward intentionality, though, are the recurring patterns. Multiple zodiac figures, Virgo, Leo, Taurus, align with key solar and lunar events, forming a cohesive system rather than isolated quirks. The River Brew's autumnal alignment with Virgo mirrors the constellation's prominence in harvest lore, while Aquarius's winter solstice connection echoes ancient water rituals tied to the darkest days of the year. This thematic consistency hints at design, as if the zodiac's creators wove celestial events into the land's very fabric, turning astronomy into something you could walk through, touch, and feel beneath your feet. The question lingers: if these alignments were deliberate, what purpose did they serve? One theory paints the zodiac as a sacred clock, its figures marking planting seasons, religious festivals, or communal gatherings. Imagine Bronze Age farmers watching the sunrise over Taurus's horns, signaling it was time to drive cattle to higher ground, or Druid priests leading processions along Aquarius's streams during the solstice, mirroring the heavens to invoke divine favor. Another possibility is that the zodiac functioned as an initiation landscape where celestial alignments guided spiritual journeys, a physical manifestation of the soul's path through the stars. Modern technology offers tantalizing clues. LiDAR scans reveal subtle terracing near alignment points, suggesting ceremonial platforms or viewing stations. Soil analysis at these sites shows elevated traces of charcoal and burnt offerings, hinting at ritual fires timed to celestial events, but definitive proof remains elusive. Without inscriptions or tools left behind, the zodiac's astronomical brilliance exists in the realm of compelling circumstance rather than airtight evidence. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between intention and interpretation. Even if ancient hands didn't sculpt every hill to mirror the stars, generations of storytellers, pilgrims, and farmers might have refined the land's natural contours into a shared celestial language. The Glastonbury Zodiac, then, becomes more than a map. It's a dialogue between earth and sky, one that changes with the turning of the seasons and the perspectives of those who walk its paths. Whether by design or destiny, its alignments remind us that the cosmos isn't just above us, it's all around us, woven into the very ground we stand on. From the eerie glow of horror films to the hypnotic beats of electronic music, the Glastonbury Zodiac has slithered its way into popular culture, becoming shorthand for ancient, earthbound mysticism. Take the cult classic The Wicker Man. While its pagan horrors unfold on a fictional Scottish island, the director borrowed imagery straight from Glastonbury's star-mapped hills, dressing the sacrificial grounds with zodiac-like crop circles and terraces mimicking the Tor's labyrinth. Even more explicit is the indie film A Field in England, where alchemists chase cosmic secrets across a war-torn landscape that mirrors the zodiac's Virgo formation, her river-robed silhouette looming as a silent witness to madness. These aren't just aesthetic choices, they tap into the zodiac's reputation as a place where the mundane world frays at the edges, revealing something older and darker beneath. Television, too, has weaponized the zodiac's mystique. In the X-Files episode Detour, Mulder and Scully stumble upon a Florida forest patterned with Glastonbury-esque earthworks, a nod to the idea that such star maps might exist globally, waiting to resurrect forgotten powers. More recently, the BBC's The Living and the Dead wove the zodiac into a Victorian ghost story, portraying it as a dormant energy grid that amplifies psychic phenomena. The Land Remembers whispers one character standing atop a hill shaped like Scorpio's tail, a line that could double as the zodiac's unofficial slogan in pop culture. Even children's shows like Hilda sneak in sly references, with animated versions of Glastonbury's giants sleeping under patchwork hills. Music amplifies the zodiac's resonance, turning its contours into soundscapes. Progressive rock legends like Yes immortalized it in their 1972 epic Close to the Edge, whose lyrics map a spiritual journey through the circle at Glastonbury. Meanwhile, electronic acts like the orb-sampled whispers about the zodiacs lay lines into ambient tracks, as if encoding its secrets into audio sigils. Local folk bands take it further. Somerset's own Stick in the Wheel performs ballads about walking the lion's path, their melodies tuned to the cadence of burrow mump slopes. The zodiac's pull even extends to hip-hop. Rapper Key Tempest's Let Them Eat Chaos name drops the Tor as a beacon in a world that forgot its own magic. But why does this obscure landscape feature hijack imaginations across genres? Perhaps because it embodies a primal trope, the idea that the earth itself is a keeper of secrets, a puzzle box waiting for the right hands or lenses to unlock it. Video games like The Secret World cast the Zodiac as a battleground for occult factions, while graphic novels like Promethea reimagine it as a living spellbook. Even advertising co-opts its aura. A recent perfume ad filmed near Windmill Hill framed Virgo's silhouette as the embodiment of timeless allure. The Zodiac's cultural footprint reveals less about ancient history and more about modern hunger for connection, for mystery, for proof that the world still holds wonders no algorithm can explain. Whether as a plot device or a poetic backdrop, it persists because it offers something rare, a story written not on screens but in soil and stone, inviting us to look down as much as up. Every retelling, no matter how fictionalized, whispers the same question: what if the ground beneath our feet is still listening? For every believer in the Glastonbury Zodiac's ancient genius, there's a scientist with a clipboard and a skeptical eyebrow raised. Geologists slice through the mystery with cold, hard facts. The rolling hills and winding rivers that form the Zodiac's shapes are textbook examples of natural processes at work. Somerset's landscape, they point out, is a patchwork of glacial deposits, erosional quirks, and meandering waterways, all shaped over millennia by ice, rain, and the relentless pull of gravity. The Lion's Mane of Burrow-Mump, a classic example of differential erosion where softer rock wears away faster than harder layers, leaving behind dramatic contours. Virgo's flowing robes traced by the River Brew, nothing more than the predictable path of a watercourse cutting through clay-rich soil. To these experts, the Zodiac is less a sacred blueprint and more a geological Rorschach test, one where human imagination does all the heavy lifting. Archaeologists bring another layer of skepticism to the table. They've combed the Zodiac's alleged sites for traces of intentional construction, stone tools, post holes, earth-moving artifacts, and come up startlingly empty. Compare this to undisputed ancient monuments like Stonehenge, where excavations reveal pickaxes, animal bones from feasts, and even worker camps. The Zodiac, by contrast, leaves no such breadcrumbs. Medieval field boundaries and drainage ditches often coincide with Maltwood's Zodiac lines, but these date to a time when star maps were neither a priority nor a known practice among farmers. Even the much-touted alignments with solstices crumble under scrutiny. While a few vantage points do frame the sunrise on key dates, statisticians note that given 30 square miles of varied terrain, a handful of accurate alignments are statistically inevitable, like finding a face in the clouds after staring at the sky long enough. Historians land the sharpest blows by attacking the Zodiac's timeline. Glastonbury's medieval monks were obsessive record keepers, yet their chronicles never mention a giant celestial diagram in their backyard. Even more damning, the concept of the 12-sign zodiac as we know it didn't reach Britain until the Roman era, millennia after the landscape's glacial formation. Prehistoric Britons revered the stars, yes, but their surviving monuments focus on lunar cycles and solstice markers, not Mediterranean astrological symbols. The idea that Neolithic farmers would sculpt Virgos and Leos into hillsides, historians argue, is like claiming they built supermarkets, an absurd projection of modern frameworks onto ancient minds. Then there's the psychology behind the phenomenon. Cognitive scientists call it patternicity, the human brain's tendency to impose meaningful shapes on random noise. From the man in the moon to Jesus's face on a piece of toast, we're wired to see significance where none exists. The Glastonbury Zodiac, skeptics suggest, is simply this instinct writ large. Once Maltwood drew her lines in the 1920s, the pattern became self-reinforcing. Newcomers arrive primed to see the Zodiac, so they do. It's the same phenomenon that makes constellations feel obvious until you learn that other cultures connected those same stars into entirely different pictures. Yet the most compelling rebuttal might come from the land itself. LiDAR scans and aerial surveys show that many of the Zodiac's figures shift over decades as rivers change course and farming alters contours. If the design were intentional, wouldn't its creators have built in permanence carved markers, stone guides, something beyond fleeting arrangements of mud and grass? The counterargument that the zodiac was meant to evolve feels suspiciously convenient, a way to explain away the lack of solid evidence. Still, even the staunchest critics admit the zodiac's power as a cultural mirror. Whether natural or man-made, it tells us less about ancient Britain and more about ourselves, our hunger for hidden meanings, our longing to feel the past reaching out to us. The hills may not hold a star map, but they do hold something just as valuable, a reminder that wonder doesn't require proof to feel real. Glastonbury's fields and hills have long been a magnet for those who swear they've felt something inexplicable, a hum in the earth, a pull in the air, or visions that defy logic. Take Sarah, a local herbalist who's gathered plants near Windmill Hill for decades. One midsummer dawn, while collecting vervain where Virgo's figure lies, she insists the ground beneath her pulsed with warmth despite the morning chill. It wasn't just heat, she recalls. It was rhythmic, like a heartbeat underfoot. Nearby, a group of geomancers mapping ley lines with copper rods claim their instruments spun wildly near the Taurus formation, as if hitting an invisible current. Then there's the retired archaeology professor who, while surveying Burrow Mump at dusk, photographed streaks of light arcing across the hillside, no lanterns or cars in sight. The camera caught what my eyes didn't, he admits, lines of light tracing exactly where Maltwood drew Leo's mane. Visitors' stories are even more vivid. A woman from Munich describes collapsing in tears upon first glimpsing the tour, overwhelmed by a sense of remembering a place she'd never been. A Canadian backpacker camping near Aquarius's Springs swears he awoke to chanting, no one around, yet the sound seemed to rise from the soil itself. Even hardened researchers aren't immune. One hydrologist studying the River Kerry's bends abandoned his gear mid-survey, compelled to follow an urge to walk Sagittarius's arrow path. "I'm a scientist," he later wrote, "but that day I felt like a character in a story the land was telling. Yet for every account pulsing with wonder, there's a skeptic's counterpoint." The heartbeat Sarah felt. Seismic sensors nearby recorded no activity that morning geologists suggest subterranean water shifts could explain the sensation. Those spinning copper rods, mineral deposits in Somerset soil, create natural conductivity, easily mistaken for energy lines. As for the professor's mysterious light streaks, photography experts cite lens flare amplified by the tour's reflective quartz veins. Even the chanting might trace to infrasound low-frequency waves produced by wind passing through the tour's terraces, known to trigger auditory hallucinations. What makes these testimonies so compelling isn't their airtight proof, but their consistency. Across decades and cultures, people describe similar phenomena along the zodiac's contours: vibrations, lights, echoes of ritual. A farmer near Cadbury Castle recounts generations of his family avoiding a particular field at noon, not out of superstition, but because shadows their form. A bull's horns every spring, sharp as a blade. Another local mentions how her grandmother's sheepdog would circle a spot near Godney Moor, refusing to cross an unseen boundary matching Pisces' tail. Animal behaviorists shrug, but parapsychologists lean in. The challenge lies in separating subjective experience from objective truth. Orc and warp perception studies show that places steeped in legend literally alter how brains process sensory input. Yet dismissing all accounts as wishful thinking feels equally reductive. Perhaps the zodiac acts less as a transmitter of energy and more as a mirror, reflecting back whatever seekers project onto it. Whether the phenomena are geological, psychological, or something beyond current science, one thread unites every story: the land leaves no one unchanged. Even the staunchest rationalists admit that standing where constellations touch the earth stirs something wordless, a hum not in the soil but in the soul. The Glastonbury Zodiac isn't just a relic of the past, it's a living mystery, evolving with each generation that walks its winding paths. Even now, researchers armed with cutting-edge technology and centuries-old manuscripts are piecing together new clues, while grassroots movements fight to preserve the landscape from modern development. The Zodiac's allure lies in its refusal to be solved, its secrets shimmering just out of reach, inviting both the scholarly and the spiritual to keep searching. Recent years have seen a surge in interdisciplinary studies blending archaeology, astronomy, and even geophysics. Teams from universities like Bristol and Bath are using magnetometry to scan beneath the soil for hidden earthworks, while amateur sleuths pore over drone footage, flagging subtle anomalies in the terrain. One groundbreaking project employed AI to analyze thousands of satellite images, mapping how natural erosion and human activity might have altered the Zodiac's outlines over centuries. Early results suggest certain formations, like the curve of Pisces' tail, align with prehistoric fish traps, hinting that practical and sacred purposes might have intertwined. Yet for every discovery, a dozen questions arise. Why do some figures hold up under scrutiny while others dissolve like mist when examined too closely? Preservation efforts have become a battleground of competing interests. Local conservation groups campaign to designate the Zodiac as a protected cultural landscape, citing its role in Somerset's identity. But farmers argue against restrictions that could hinder their livelihoods, and developers eye the land for housing. A compromise emerged in 2022 when the National Trust acquired key parcels near the Tor, pledging to maintain public access while safeguarding the terrain. Still, tensions simmer. When a proposal to reroute a footpath through Virgo's Heart sparked protests, the council faced a dilemma: honor modern convenience or protect an intangible heritage. The decision to divert the path, marked by a plaque explaining the Zodiac's significance, shows how deeply this enigma has rooted itself in the community's conscience. The Zodiac's future might lie in the hands of storytellers as much as scientists. Glastonbury's younger generations are reimagining the myths for the digital age. Augmented reality apps now overlay constellation lines onto the landscape for smartphone-toting pilgrims, while TikTok creators film Zodiac challenges, racing to visit all 12 signs in a day. Some fear this trivializes the mystery, but others see it as vital reinvention. After all, the Zodiac has always been a mirror, reflecting the hopes and curiosities of its time. Medieval monks saw divine order in its curves. Victorian antiquarians framed it as a relic of Saxon ingenuity. Today's seekers might project climate anxieties or AI-era mysticism onto its forms, but the impulse remains the same: to find meaning in the land. What's next? Archaeologists whisper about undiscovered tunnels beneath the Tor, possibly linking to the Zodiac's Aquarius formation. Geneticists are testing ancient pollen samples from sacred springs, tracing how ritual use might have shaped local ecosystems. And in a quiet corner of the British Library, a doctoral student recently uncovered a 12th century sketch of Glastonbury's hills labeled Figuri Caelestes, celestial figures suggesting the Zodiac's memory survived even in monastic silence. Whether these threads will weave into a clearer picture or fray into more questions is anyone's guess. The Zodiac's greatest gift may be its endless adaptability. It's a puzzle that resists completion, a story that rewrites itself with every pair of eyes that trace its contours. As long as there are hills to climb and stars to gaze upon, the Glastonbury Zodiac will endure, not as a question demanding an answer, but as an invitation to keep wondering, exploring, and imagining. In a world obsessed with resolutions, some mysteries are too precious to solve. Standing at the crossroads of history, myth, and geology, the Glastonbury Zodiac remains one of England's most tantalizing enigmas. On one side, you have the passionate believers, those who see the sprawling constellation of earthworks as a sacred star map, crafted by ancient hands with knowledge we've yet to fully comprehend. The precision of solstice alignments, the eerie resemblance of river bends to celestial forms, and the whispers of oral tradition all weave a compelling case for intentional design. Could it be the work of Neolithic astronomers, medieval monks, or even a lost civilization echoing from the edges of memory? The theories are as varied as they are fascinating, each backed by fragments of evidence that stop just short of proof. Then there's the chorus of skeptics armed with Occam's razor and geological surveys, who argue that the zodiac is nothing more than nature's artistry, embellished by human imagination. Rivers carve their own paths, hills erode into suggestive shapes, and the brain's knack for pattern-seeking does the rest. After all, if you stare at any landscape long enough, you'll start to see faces in the clouds or lions in the ridges. The absence of tools, inscriptions, or any definitive archaeological smoking gun leaves the zodiac's origins suspended in the realm of maybe. Yet perhaps the most intriguing possibility lies somewhere in between. What if the truth isn't a binary choice between accident and intention, but a tapestry woven from both? Imagine early settlers noticing natural formations that mirrored the stars and deciding to enhance them, redirecting a stream here, building a mound there, slowly refining the land into a reflection of the heavens. Over centuries, generations might have added layers of meaning, turning the zodiac into a living palimpsest of myth, utility, and spirituality. This middle ground acknowledges the power of human agency without dismissing the role of chance, offering a bridge between the pragmatic and the poetic. Theories will continue to collide, and new technologies may one day tilt the scales toward clarity. But for now, the Glastonbury Zodiac's greatest gift is its mystery. It invites us to ponder not just the past, but how we reconstruct it, why we long to find order in chaos, and what it means when the land itself becomes a story. So, what do you think? Is the Zodiac a deliberate masterpiece, a beautiful coincidence, or something even stranger? Have you walked its paths or felt its pull? Share your thoughts below, and remember, some of history's most enduring truths began as whispers in the wind. After all, if the stars could map our destinies, why couldn't the earth map the stars?